Sales Nation, are you finding it tough to sell on the phone right now? Do your phone calls start off? This is the starting point. Do they start off okay? You feel like you're getting somewhere, but then soon squiggle off into nowhere. Well, imagine if you could gently nudge your buyers back on track towards the close and get more deals done. Well, stay tuned because that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do in this very video. Salespeople are often given mixed messages in their training. They're told to be a consultant on one end of the thing. They got consultant here. They're told to build relationships and ask great questions. But salespeople are also told to be over here, aggressive and to get the deal done at all costs and always push for the close. Now, this always confused me because these are polar opposite approaches, right? One side over here is being passive. On the other side is being proper aggressive. Neither of these approaches on their own take into account what the buyer wants either. Because at some point during a sales conversation, the buyer's going to want you to ask them questions, to share insights, and to move over to this side of the board. And then at other points, they're going to want you to shoot over this way and to start being more assertive and to help them break through the status quo and get their deal done so that they can get your product implemented and their pain lifted. So this never really sat well with me. So perhaps a better way to think about selling on the phone, if we get rid of this for a second, is that you're trying to nudge the squiggle. Now, let me explain. When you're selling on the phone, you should always be moving towards the close over here. This is the target that we're always moving towards. You should not be having a check-in phone call or a relationship building conversation. They are worthless in modern B2B sales. Now, when you jump on the phone with a potential buyer, starting at this point here, right, you should have the goal of closing something, closing anything. Essentially, it could be closing the date for the next meeting or securing more information about the decision makers within the account. Doesn't matter what it is, you've got to be closing something on the phone. You should always be closing something. Now, when you get on the phone, of course, it's not always as simple as just going from A to B. It'd be great if it was. Your buyer, they're going to start off in this direction. They're going to try and pull you in all of these different directions and push you around, and the amateur salesperson is never going to get to the close, even though that's what they were aiming for at the beginning of the phone call. So your job is to keep nudging them. So you're this little arrow here, you're nudging them back towards the close. And you're going to nudge them back towards it again, over and over and over. And you can do this in many different ways. Now, one example is that salespeople try to use statements rather than questions to nudge their buyers in the right direction, but they often get this process wrong. So the next tip is to use what we call positive verbs. And I'm going to explain this with an example that I know you've probably experienced before. So how many times have you seen a sign that says, don't do something? Don't do it. How many times have you seen a sign like this and then you've wanted to go and do exactly what it's telling you not to? Of course you have, because this is human nature. Now, a lot of salespeople on the phone will try and nudge a conversation by saying, well, I wouldn't do X. They're trying to nudge you back on the right pathway here by saying, well, I wouldn't do that. But when you do this, you start to pull the buyer in to asking more questions about, well, why shouldn't I do this? And you start to become combative with them. So this is what's called a negative verb statement. Now, the smarter move is to use verbs positively. So instead of saying, well, I wouldn't do X, instead of saying this, what I want you to say is, why, the alternative, the why is where you're trying to push them towards. Perhaps why would be a better way to do it. When you use a positive verb statement like this, the buyer is much more likely to accept this nudge rather than reject it. If they reject it, they carry on going this direction. They're going to accept the nudge and move back into the momentum that you push them towards the close. And the final tip in this video is to take control of the conversation as soon as it starts, because a lot of sales conversations start here and immediately go in the wrong direction. And you can very easily take control of the conversation in this very critical moment here when you're selling on the phone by sharing some of the common challenges that you're seeing in the buying marketplace from customers that are similar to the person that you're prospecting, rather than what most salespeople do when they start a phone conversation. They say, What problems do you have? What pain points do you have? When you ask close-ended questions like this, you're far more likely to stay in control of the squiggle. You're immediately nudging it. You're immediately funneling this squiggle so it has to come out at a point which is heading towards the close. Because if you ask the average buyer what problems they have, you've literally no idea what crap they're going to come out with. But when you start the conversation off by sharing, well, the 3 pain points that they might be suffering from right now, again, you keep the conversation on the pathway towards the close. So for me, selling our salesman.org sales success platform, I start my calls to sales leaders by saying, so we're working with hundreds of sales teams right now. The most common pains that sales leaders tell me that, number one, they find it very difficult to measure their sales team's sales skill, their performance. And then number two, the other pain that they often share with me is that they have issues coaching their team to success. Do you face these issues as well? So as you can see, I've immediately taken control and I've funneled the squiggle down to a straight line here towards the close itself. I've already nudged it, I've already funneled the conversation towards 2 problems I know I can help that sales leader with. And so there we have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, keep watching. There's a couple of videos on the screen right now, and don't forget to subscribe.